Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. The states that comprise the region of New England, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, and Vermont, are some of the oldest in the Union. With jam-packed histories that go all the way back to some of the earliest years of America's colonization, a grand plethora of myths and legends were born in New England. Ghosts, vampires, monsters, demons, age-old curses, haunted locations, and much more. This program will detail a dozen of the most famous, most eerie, and most outlandish legends of New England. Our first legend comes from Rhode Island, or rather off the coast of it. Some say that on winter nights, one may glimpse the spectacle of a ghost ship, colloquially known as the Palatine. Tradition states that a German ship carrying immigrants to Philadelphia, which had a troublesome voyage already rife with contaminated water, short rations, disease, and even piracy, had run aground during a storm on December 26, 1738, and was stranded near Block Island. Some variations of the story claim that the locals of Block Island had made a valiant effort to rescue the passengers on board, while others say that the islanders had initially lured the ship toward them in order to seize the cargo for themselves. Regardless of the locals' involvement in the wreck, legend has it that on the nights between Christmas and New Year's Eve, one may still see the apparition of the Palatine sail across the waters near Block Island, burning atop the tide, and they may even hear the deathly cries of a woman who refused to leave the ship as it sank on that fateful night. Deep in the woods of northern New Hampshire lurks a creature, or a race of creatures, known as the Wood Devil of Coos County. Similar to beings such as Bigfoot, the Wood Devil is said to be roughly humanoid in shape, though much taller, allegedly between 7 and 8 feet tall, and covered in long, shaggy fur. But unlike Bigfoot and other ape men of legend, the Wood Devil is uniquely gray in color, and incredibly slender, to the point of gaunt. Further distinguishing it from Sasquatch is its wide mouth full of needle-like teeth, not unlike that of a possum. Though its appearance is somewhat more feral and frightening than your typical ape-man cryptid, the Wood Devil allegedly is a reclusive creature that does all it can to avoid human beings. Its slender form makes it easy for the creature to hide behind trees and camouflage with the foliage. Witnesses report that typically they don't see the creature until they are standing face to face with it. As it sees someone approaching, it stands very still, with its body flush to the tree. And if the interloping human comes to the side of the tree where it is hiding, the creature can move around it silently to continue to avoid detection. But should the person move too near, the Wood Devil would come out of hiding and release a terrifying, ear-splitting scream. The sound of its wail and its sudden and arguably macabre appearance would be enough to make anyone run back the way they came, or even fall over in shock, giving the Wood Devil ample opportunity to retreat back into the woods. But folklore of New England is not limited to ghosts and monsters. There are tales of failed towns and cursed colonies, such as Dudleytown in Connecticut. Legend has it, the founders of Dudleytown were descendants of Edmund Dudley, an English nobleman who was executed for treason during the reign of Henry VIII. From then on, the Dudley family was placed under a curse that had followed them across the Atlantic Ocean and to America. The supposed curse was blamed for instances of crop failures and mental illness, as well as several purported violent deaths in the village. Bad luck was rampant, in the form of pitiful or even non-existent harvests, lightning strikes, attacks from natives, even children disappearing. Stories of settlers going mad, hallucinating seeing monsters and savage beasts in the distant trees, murdering one another in fits of insanity. Historians have debunked many of the legends associated with Dudleytown, even disputing the Dudleys of the area being related to the English nobleman who shares their name. Even so, paranormal enthusiasts and the adventurous at heart continue to hold a strong fascination with the legend of the Dudleytown curse. Many towns across America have reports of seeing strange creatures on desolate roads after dark. In Dover, Massachusetts, there comes the tale of the Dover Demon. As the story goes, on April 21, 1977, 17-year-old Bill Bartlett was driving home that night when he came across a creature with tendril-like fingers and huge glowing eyes on top of a stone wall on Farm Street. Bartlett made a sketch of the creature for his father, but both decided not to report the sighting just yet, fearing that the account would not be believed. However, as fate would have it, that same night 15-year-old John Baxter saw a small, pale, and humanoid figure approaching from down Miller Hill Road. Baxter claimed that he had followed the creature into the woods some distance before he turned back, and like Bartlett, he also made a sketch of the demon. Baxter's account of the creature and its physical appearance was nearly identical to the account that Bill Bartlett had provided. The next day, Abby Brabham reported seeing the so-called Dover Demon along Springdale Avenue, alleging that the creature had lifted itself off the ground and stood partially upright, looking at her with unblinking eyes. All of the witnesses described the creature as having a body similar in size and shape to that of a human infant, though with an abnormally large head, with no discernible features besides its huge protruding eyes. Though its origin is fairly recent compared to other New England legends, and skeptics have dismissed the creature as an elaborate hoax, or misidentification of a snowy owl or a foal or even a moose calf, the Dover Demon achieved nationwide recognition and is still said to be seen in Dover, Massachusetts to this day. The Lighthouse on Rhode Island in Maine is the setting of multiple ghost stories, but one of the most famous concerns the ghost of fisherman and island squatter Howard Hobbs, who shot and killed landlord Fred Milliken in 1896. As the tale goes, Hobbs had drunkenly brought a loaded rifle onto Milliken's property to shoot birds. Milliken had asked Hobbs if the gun was loaded, to which the latter denied that it had any live ammunition. This led to an altercation between the two men, one which led to Milliken being shot in the chest. Distraught, Hobbs went to the lighthouse to get some help for Milliken, and to turn himself in to then-keeper and deputy, Thomas Henry Orcutt. Orcutt and Hobbs rushed back to the scene, only to see the lifeless body of Milliken and his weeping wife. Overwhelmed with guilt, Hobbs then returned to his old shack and shot himself with the very same rifle he had used to kill Milliken. In the years to follow, the ghosts of Hobbs, Milliken, and even Orcutt have been said to still haunt the island, and one may even hear anguished cries on still nights. A copper statue located at Greenmount Cemetery in Montpelier, Vermont, is that of a male figure sitting with closed eyes, looking upwards, his head covered with a shawl. This statue is known as Black Agnes, and supposedly has the power to curse people who dare to sit on his lap. The statue was commissioned by businessman John Erastus Hubbard to watch over his final resting place in Greenmount. Some people believe that the statue was cursed as a result of the misdeeds and greedy demeanor of Hubbard while he was still alive. Some of the reported odd occurrences surrounding Black Agnes include glowing red eyes at night, blood-curdling screams, and other creepy noises emanating from the statue's vicinity. Stories have been told about a number of people who dared to sit in the lap of Black Agnes, who were plagued with gradually worsening luck of all sorts, culminating in their untimely death less than a month later. Though the legend is generally accepted as mere superstition, few people would dare sit upon the lap of Black Agnes. Vampire legends are widespread, and New England has had more than its fair share over the centuries. One such case was the tale of Mercy Brown. In the late 1800s, in Exeter, Rhode Island, a case of tuberculosis had stricken the Brown family. The first to succumb to tuberculosis, or consumption as it was called, was Mercy's mother, Mary Eliza, followed by the eldest daughter, Mary Olive, in 1884. In 1891, Mercy and her brother Edwin would also go on to catch consumption, with Mercy succumbing to the illness in January of 1892, at the age of 19. Rumor began to circulate among the townsfolk. The family were no doubt the victims of vampires. Or perhaps one among them was one of the undead. After some prodding from the populace, Mercy's father, George Brown, gave permission to exhume the corpses of his wife and daughters on March 17, 1892. Though Mary Eliza and Mary Olive's bodies had decomposed to the point of skeletons, Mercy's was noticeably intact, perhaps due to the winter's cold staving off bacteria and other microorganisms, though that would not have occurred to the superstitious lot of the time. Upon closer inspection from the town's doctor, it appeared that Mercy still had liquid blood within her heart. The townsfolk took this all as a sign that Mercy was indeed a vampire, and must be dealt with accordingly. As superstition dictated, Mercy's heart and liver were burned, and the ashes were mixed with holy water to create a tonic that was given to the sick Edwin to drink, as an effort to resolve his illness and stop the influence of the vampire. 2 months later, Edwin Brown had died of the same illness that took the rest of his family, save for his father. Though Mercy was not a vampire in reality, that would not stop the spread of her story, or any supernatural embellishments that folklore is notorious for. The Chase House of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is said to be among the most famous and most tragic of haunted houses in America. In the late 19th century, the house was built as a refuge for orphaned children, and in due time would go on to become a court-appointed children's home. The ghosts here are not the spirits of tragic children who died due to illness or misfortune, but rather the tortured soul of a young girl who hanged herself. Residents and visitors to the Chase house had reported seeing the girl's ghostly form running about the halls of the house, and disappearing if she is approached. She is also said to be capable of poltergeist-like activity, unlocking doors out of nowhere, causing electrical malfunctions, and even screaming out in the night, chilling all who hear her. The hanging hills of Meriden, Connecticut, are a popular area for hiking and outdoor activity. They are also said to be the hunting grounds of a spectral hound, the black dog of the hanging hills. Its physical appearance is nothing out of the ordinary, appearing as a short-haired black dog of a moderate size. Yet there are two signs by which it is recognized. It leaves no paw prints behind it in the dust of summer or even the snow of winter. And it seems to appear and vanish in the blink of an eye, gone without a trace. Legend has it that if one were to encounter this dog on 3 separate occasions, that person would die a sudden and oftentimes painful death. It is important to note that the dog is merely a harbinger of unfortunate demise, not the one who does the killing. The poor victim may be killed right there on the spot by falling trees, an avalanche, or a ledge giving out from beneath their feet. Or they may die on their way home, whether they are just leaving the woods, or even on their car ride home. Spectral black dogs of legend are always a frightening omen, and the black dog of the hanging hills is no exception. The harbor of Gloucester, Massachusetts, is located just north of Boston on the lower part of Cape Ann, jutting out into the Atlantic Ocean. Since 1638, sightings of a sea serpent have haunted the coast of the harbor town and nearby New England waters. The Gloucester Sea Serpent, also called the Cape Ann Serpent or the Ipswich Serpent, is described as being anywhere from 60 to 90 feet long, shaped entirely of keg-sized humps, black snake-like skin durable enough to repel musket fire, and eyes as large as pewter plates. Sightings continued into the 19th century, with reports of it attacking small boats and fishing vessels. As time would go on, sightings of the Gloucester Sea Serpent lessened more and more. Some believe the deterioration for the once fertile fishing areas off of New England by overfishing may have caused the creature to search for new hunting grounds or even go extinct. Many believe it never existed, merely a misidentification of an existing creature or an elaborate hoax. Others, however, believe the serpent is still out there, prowling the coastal waters of New England. Cursed locales are abundant in New England, though it is said that some cursed places were once very sacred. Such is the case for Brunswick Springs in Vermont. As the story goes, during the French and Indian War, a soldier was gravely wounded a short while away from the springs. His Abenaki companions took him to the spring in order to heal him. He miraculously recovered, and he sought to bottle the spring's water and sell it. The Abenakis objected to his profiting from the sacred waters, prompting a fight. The skirmish resulted in the soldier killing an Abenaki man and his infant son. The man's wife and mother to the child put a curse on anyone who tried to profit from the spring, both its waters and its surrounding shores. 4 enterprising businessmen ignored the curse and built successive hotels near the healthful springs. The first was built in 1860 and expanded in the 1890s, when it mysteriously burned to the ground. A second hotel was built a short while later, and soon collapsed into the river. A third hotel burned down before it was even finished being built. Cursed or not, no one has dared try to make money off of Brunswick Springs, and today it is protected as a sacred Abenaki site. Our final legend claims that on a forested road on the outskirts of Haynesville, Maine, lurks the Ghost Bride. As the story goes, a newlywed couple were driving home on a dark winter's night. But the groom was inebriated, and he soon lost control of the vehicle, and he smashed into a telephone pole, killing him on impact. The bride managed to crawl from the wreck, and she made her way back to the snowy road. She waited for hours, hoping for someone to drive by and help her. But the conditions of the road and weather ensured few, if any, were out that night. Before the sun rose, the bride had succumbed to the cold and froze to death. Those traveling on the roads around Haynesville Woods have reported seeing the woman in the white gown, wandering along the side of the road in search of help for her and her doomed husband. Should a driver offer a ride, the woman is said to accept, and those who do have reported to have felt a bitter chill in the air as she entered their car. She directs them to the end of the road before she disappears completely, leaving nothing but a cold chill in the air around the passenger seat. Being some of the oldest states to be established in America, New England has had ample time to accumulate a vast assortment of legends and superstitions. From cursed statues and locations, to ghosts haunting houses and rural areas, to monsters lurking in the forests and coastal waters. Whether or not people believe in these tales as deeply as they have in previous years, these legends have stood the test of time. For many, many years, these stories have entertained the masses and have intrigued the minds of the curious and the imaginative.